Let's talk the title race and Arsenal. They went to the City Ground knowing they could go 9 points clear, but they were held to a goalless draw by Nottingham Forest. Gonna be a toughie is the headline in the Sunday Express, and Tom Canton, who was at the game, said 2 big opportunities missed. He's referring to the Liverpool game as well, which keeps the door open to scrutiny for the Gunners in their hunt to end their 22-year wait for the English top-flight crown. Is this an opportunity missed for Arsenal, as Tom is referring to there, John, or might they look back in the fullness of time and say, do you know what, it wasn't a bad point?
No, I think it's an opportunity missed. I do. Quite brutal, really. I also thought that, bearing in mind they had Liverpool where they could have gone 8 clear, you know, that game, and they draw and they basically push it to 6. Earlier in the day, their mood must have been enhanced by Manchester City dropping points, and Arsenal have to feast on that and seize on that. Just because I think that bearing in mind they finished finished second for 3 years running, I do think they'll be looking nervously in their rear view mirror, and I think that the aspect of then winning, going 9 points clear, would have given them a huge lift, a huge boost. And it would have been a statement, because yes, it is a very difficult place to go. I get that. I don't think they played brilliantly, and listening to Arteta afterwards, you know, again felt like, oh, we've been wronged, and you know, it didn't go for us. And I know he's sort of upset about the penalty call. But I think it was an opportunity to make a statement. I thought Arsenal did put on such a strong performance. And look at this. This is the one. And when I first saw it, when I watched it at home, I didn't think it was, I have to say. I think it was Lucy Ward, who was excellent on co-coms, was talking about, I think she thought it was going to be. And then you look at it, and Sean Dyche says the game's gone if it's given. Arteta is spewing about it, isn't he? But I'm not completely convinced. And Arsenal, they've only got themselves to blame for not scoring. They had very clear chances in that game. And yeah, they've only got themselves to blame, really. I thought Forest played really well, to be fair. Bearing in mind their poor results of late. And I just think, I think it was an opportunity wasted rather than a point gained for Arsenal, really. That 9 points clear would have stamped their authority all over that title race. And again, they've just not been able to pull away from the rest of the chasing pack, and I think that's the frustration.
I think the point is, though, isn't it, that Arsenal shouldn't need what would have been a very dubious penalty to take something away from Forest. Forest were good yesterday, but some of their recent performances, I was at their game against Fulham and West Ham, and they were horrendous in both, really. They've got individual players that can do a lot, but they didn't look like a collective. That obviously changed yesterday, and you wonder whether it's one of those games where there's a team down the bottom that, in the games there's a bit of pressure, they're anxious, but those ones where not much is expected, they really raised their level, and obviously frustrated Arsenal yesterday. And I think you could see, I think it was Declan Rice coming off at the end was absolutely furious with himself and probably with the team, you know, saying again, we've done it. And I wonder if that is just the second place for the last few years niggling away in the back of their minds, because so many of them will come out and say, oh no, game by game by game. But they'll all know Manchester City's next 3 or 4 games that they've got coming up. They'll know what they need and where they need it. I think they will be fine eventually. They've got more than enough of a cushion. Obviously, they've got the newly fearsome Carrick's Man United next week, but they'll get through that fairly easily, you would think. I don't think it's the worst result to go there, and they've dropped points back to back. A couple of draws, it's really not the end of the world. It's not like a proper wheels coming off this. We've built this lead and then surrendering it completely. It's dipped a bit, but they're still ticking over. And you just look at the changes. I thought it was good from Arteta yesterday to be that ruthless. The change at half-time and then another raft of changes very quickly after that. You look at the strength and depth that they've got, and I just can't see them fumbling it this time.
I still think the only team who can beat Arsenal is Arsenal themselves. I think that the gap between... I just don't think City will get enough points in over what remains of the season, given the wobble that City are having at the moment. I don't think City will finish the season especially strongly, and therefore I think the biggest single threat to Arsenal is Arsenal panicking, really. So I think so much of what happens in the title race from here will depend on whether or not Arsenal will, are they going to get really worried about their position? Are they going to get worried about their performances? Or are they going to be able to keep on keep on grinding away in a fairly consistent way, which I think they are doing at the moment. There's obviously, the results are gone a little bit up and down recently, but I'm not sure how much the performance levels have changed. And if they can just keep that mental stability, keep that consistency, and not get too wrapped up in it, then I think that will probably be enough for them. I don't think they have too much to worry about in terms of City.
And you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Victor Gyökeres.
Oh, here we go.
I mean, honestly, it's ridiculous now. He's just on a different level, technically, to the rest of the team. Yes, the other players like him and want him to see well. You can see that in the way that he's sort of almost celebrated in midweek, and yeah, everyone's cheering. But honestly, it's like they're doing it as he's a mascot. I mean, he is not good enough technically for that Arsenal team.
Let me put this to you then, John.
It's becoming actually embarrassing.
No, but let me
£64 million. Yes, he works hard. Yes, he occupies defenders. But Thomas,
you can't underestimate that, can you?
Yes, you can.
That's the basic, isn't it?
Honestly, it's ridiculous.
Okay, let me put this to you then.
Not
they
good
are
enough.
top of the
He's
league.
not scoring
They're top
enough
of the
goals.
league by
it's
7
like
points.
They're playing with 10 men.
They're top of the league by 7 points. They're clear at the top of the Champions League group. They've got 1 foot in the final of the Carabao Cup. They're into round 4 of the FA Cup. Can all of that genuinely be achieved by carrying a player?
Yes, because that is exactly, I'm afraid to say, my friend, that is exactly what's happened. Honestly, I'm sorry, but there has to be a time and a realisation that they've dropped one with Gyökeres. They've scouted strikers. They've looked at different options. Yes, they could have had Sesko, and maybe that would have been better. And different players for different opportunities and different setups. They went for Gyökeres, and let's be clear here, they did it for the here and now because he was a little bit older, experienced, and had scored goals for fun in Portugal. The absolute art of scouting and recruitment is knowing that you can take a player from a different league and a different team and he would settle in and immediately hit the ground running. And I'm afraid to say it's been proven week in, week out that yes, he scored goals in the Portuguese league for Sporting, and yes, occasionally he did it in the Champions League and he even scored a hat-trick against Man City, but they've got this one wrong. It's just not working. Havertz cannot come back soon enough. I love the way that the fans back him. I love it. I think it's brilliant. And, I really admire that and respect that. The players obviously talk him up and back him. But come on, as critics, we have to be objective about this and saying that Victor Gyökeres is not an Arsenal player.
Okay, let me put this to you, Jack. So, John has almost labelled him as a mascot and that he's been carried throughout the season. Was it ever Mikel Arteta's plan to bring Gyökeres in and have that feeling where there's no other striker fit? Because I'm sure when a player who hasn't played in this league before and he's getting his first experience of the Premier League, be he at that age where he's ready or not, wouldn't the plan ideally for Mikel Arteta have been, right, we've got Kai Havertz, let's start with Havertz, let's hopefully get 2-3-0 up in some of these games, and then I can introduce Victor Gyökeres, and then I can ease him in. But he's just having to be thrown in.
I'm sure that was his plan, but you're speaking about him as if he's like an 18-year-old they brought in from the academy. They've gone out, like John said, a more experienced player. They've spent big money on him. They've had this itch they've wanted to scratch with a striker for such a long time to get that in. This is the final piece. This will take us on. That was the commentary last year, but it was also coming from Arteta as well, going, we know this is what we need. We need that figure. We need some more depth. They needed someone that could come in, puff their chest out and go, right, oh, you need someone to get you over the line, I'll do that now. And he just hasn't looked, he's looked like he's been playing with the weight of being that person on him the whole time and just hasn't got the character or the ability to shift that. But I also think it says everything about this Arsenal squad, this Arsenal team, that despite that, they are going to win the title. And even if there's anxiety about that, I mean, how good that they can do it with 10 men. That's the one thing they can boast about.
I think to me, one of the interesting things about this is that clearly in the last 2 years, Arteta hasn't looked like he wanted to have a good old-fashioned number 9, right? Like Arsenal, actually a bit like City before Haaland, is they played their best football without, either with Gabriel Jesus, who's not really an old-fashioned number 9, or with Havertz, or with a different player. I think Mourinho's actually done really well when he's been up there. And yet for years, Arteta's been hammered by people from the outside saying, why don't you sign a number 9? Why don't you sign a number 9? Why don't you sign a number 9? And so he finally goes into the market, spends a lot of money on a good old-fashioned number 9 who's meant to be there to run the channels and win headers and do that. And it's rubbish. It's terrible. It almost makes me think, this is why managers shouldn't listen to the outside. This is why managers shouldn't listen to people on Twitter telling you what to do, because, you know, you bend over backwards and do what people on the internet want, and it doesn't work.
I mean, let's be clear. He was signed for games like yesterday, when they were struggling to make openings, when they needed the penalty box poacher, if you like, when they needed the finisher, when they needed the arch goal scorer. Where was he? Well, I'll tell you, he was absolutely nowhere near being on the end of anything, because, and look, the one time when he got away, he just looks lumbering and sort of not quick enough, not strong enough, and
the thing
he's closed down. And
the thing I worry about when I watch him is, when I watch him play, I think, if I was watching him play for West Ham or Wolves or Burnley, nobody would watch him and say, he should be playing for Arsenal. Arsenal should definitely spend 60 million quid on this guy. Look at him go. Like if he played for one of those relegation zone teams, he would look like a player who was of that level. Like he wouldn't look like someone who you'd want to be going out and spending money on.
No, you can take the boy out of Coventry, but you can't take the Coventry out of the boy. Sorry.
And no disrespect to Coventry.
No, absolutely. They were flying, by the way. Well done, Frank.
Jack, just picking up on what we've been talking about, we should remember, as John Percy rightly points out in his piece in the Sunday Telegraph, he was at the City Ground, 7 points still represents a commanding lead at the top of the table, but there was a stark reminder for Mikel Arteta that ending that drought is going to be an ordeal crammed with drama and tension. You mentioned the anxiety. Is that something that will be in the back of not just the players' minds, but it's clearly with the fans, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Until it's actually properly done, I think the Emirates is going to be a nervous wreck for the rest of the season, because they could stretch it to 10, 12 points, and until it's mathematically there will be people that think, no, we are going to completely blow this, we're going to lose every game, and somehow it's all going to go wrong, and someone like Aston Villa are going to win the title. And I just think this is going to, if they can't win it this year, Mikel Arteta needs to move on, because you can't get into a position like this with a squad they've built like this. They have done so well to get that depth of quality Premier League experienced players that they need. They've had so many injuries this year and been able to rotate Odegaard, Eze, Havertz will come back, Madueke, Saka. You can mix it all around. You can make the changes that they made yesterday that 9 times out of 10 will result in them getting across the line and picking up 3 points. And Arteta has moulded all that together and needs to show the leadership to get them to where they need to be. He's a very emotional manager, someone that thinks very deeply, and we've all seen and laughed at and been interested by some of the tactics he employs. Whether he can shut out the more bizarre elements of them to get them over the line in a title race is the real test now, and whether any of that actually works to get the extra bit. But I don't think it's going to be, celebrating their way to the title at the Emirates. They're all going to be rather nervous, because it is such a long time and such a big thing for them to achieve.
Will they do it, John?
Well, I mean, the table suggests they absolutely will. I just feel as if the last 3 years will haunt them and will be a massive point in time. And I think that is the ultimate test. And if they don't do it this year, then you'd have to question whether they would ever do it under Arteta. They've got this amazing opportunity. I do feel as if we're wrongly discounting Villa in this conversation, by the way, and I think it is a 3-horse title race. And look, logic would tell you that they will get it over the line. I just feel as if Manchester City will still have something to say in this title race, and it wouldn't surprise me if they came back. I'm dodging the question there, aren't I? But yeah.
That's fine. We will be talking about another title challenger in Aston Villa a little bit later on. And it should be remembered that Arsenal are indeed 7 points clear at the top of the Premier League.
They talk about that handball. Sean Dyche also wondered whether Forest should have had a penalty as well. What do you think on this one before we get to the handball?
Yeah, no, I think it was close initially. I did think it was a penalty, but when you look closely at it, I think Hudson-Odoi drives into the box and Timber does have hold of him, he does grab him. But you see here, he just lets go just before he gets into the penalty box, so I don't think that's a penalty for me.
So he releases him before he gets into the penalty box, so just a yellow card. This, Alan?
No, I agree with Sean Dyche. That I don't want to see this be given as a penalty. He does get a shove in the back there. The arm's close to the body, and it's in a justifiable position, and it hits the top of his sleeve first, and then onto the arm. So not handball for me, no.
Just talk to us about the psychology of playing your match after your title rivals have lost earlier in the day.
Yeah, it can be tough because I'm sure the Arsenal players, if they was watching the game, will have been sat there thinking, you know, we're going to be 9 points clear. And sometimes you forget you've got a game to play. And actually watching that game, you waste a lot of energy watching the game. So it can be tough. But I do think that was a massive point for Arsenal. I think with Man City losing, to go and get a point, I know they would have wanted 3, but to extend the lead to Man City to 7 points and get that point, I think that's a huge point for them.
Do you think that's a good point? I mean, they've actually extended a lead over City.
I think it's a good point for Arsenal and for Forest. I thought Forest deserved the point the way they worked, but for Arsenal, in terms of, it's been another good weekend for them where they extend the lead by a point, so absolutely, yes.
Next weekend it is Arsenal against Manchester United. Let's show you the Premier League table. Arsenal extend their lead to 7 points. Aston Villa will cut that gap though to 4 if they beat Everton tomorrow. Wins for Manchester United and Chelsea take them to within striking distance of 4th place Liverpool. West Ham now 5 points behind 17th place Nottingham Forest. Burnley 8 points adrift despite their draw at Anfield. That's it from us. Kelly is here tomorrow.
And as most managers would say, some are given, some are not. And that's the consistency is probably not there at the moment. But I would have thought it would have been very harsh. And I think it was up the other end, and Arsenal had done that. I think Mikel Arteta had been really, really disappointed and frustrated with if that was a penalty.
Yeah, he's already disappointed and frustrated because his side had a chance to go 9 points clear at the top of the table. They didn't take it. It's kind of the second week where they had that moment to open up a gap and they didn't do it. How frustrated do you think they would be overall?
I think they'll be frustrated because they've been the best team in the Premier League, best team in the Champions League. You know, they've got the best defence, they have the most clean sheets, they're the best almost in every category. But today, I think if he's honest, he'll realise they weren't at their best.